Purdue. Oh! Wow. Oh my day. I in a different world, in a different life, when I did my year abroad and came to North Carolina, Purdue was on my list. And
Yes, I remember
you and I
this.
never would have met, and your mum and I would be we would be alma mater mortal enemies.
Yeah.
But okay. Oh wow.
You might have gotten into a fist fight with my mom.
I'm
Um,
genuinely psyched that I got that.
you
I
should be proud of
pulled
yourself.
Purdue out of my butt.
That is very, very good.
All
And that
right,
is where
give me another one.
Indiana fans would prefer Purdue stays.
Hello, and welcome back to Athlantic, the show where an American and a Brit take turns crossing the pond to learn about sports culture in the UK and the USA. I am your resident Brit, Harry Collins.
And I am your resident American, Adam Jordan. Harry, episode 35. We are getting into the place where it is not going to get any easier for you to find good patron saints on your side of the pond. No. So I am angling to know who you picked for 35.
My patron saint absolutely deserves to be on our list of patron saints. Unfortunately, this player played in the number 35 exactly once in his career. Jermaine Defoe made his debut for West Ham wearing the number 35 before he commenced on an absolutely terrific career. He was a brilliant, consistent striker, most famously for Tottenham Hotspur. He also played for England. He played for Toronto FC in the MLS. He scored in just over every third game he played. And he's also a really wonderful person. During the latter stages of his career, he played for Sunderland, where he befriended a fan called Bradley Lowry, who was a terminally ill child who had neuroblastoma. And Bradley came to the stadium and the training ground and met the players. And Jermaine Defoe, our patron saint, took a real liking to him. Would often carry him onto the pitch as his personal mascot.
Whoa.
And then raised loads of money. Jermaine Defoe has his own associated charities, but he raised loads of money for terminally ill children and the hospitals of said children in the Northeast. In Sunderland. So I think even though he only played in the number 35 once, he's far more famous for wearing the number 11. Jermaine Defoe, because you're right, we are really running out of good. We're running out of good footballers. We get a couple of good cricketers are coming up.
Yep.
with higher numbers. There are some rugby players, but we're starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel for footballers.
You're gonna start looking on old preseason friendly tapes and find somebody who wore the number 62 because it was issued to him in training and he wore it for just sitting on the bench. And it's gonna be absolute bottom of the barrel. But Jermaine Defoe sounds like at least the second best Defoe that I've heard of. I don't know if he has any relation to Willem Dafoe. That would be kind of crazy.
Behind the Green Goblin himself.
Behind the Green Goblin. Well, there was an SNL sketch. Oh, God, I don't even know. It was probably 10 years ago at this point, where Willem Dafoe was in an ad with a bunch of celebrities, and it doesn't matter the details of the ad, the fake ad don't matter, but one of the C plot jokes of that was that this person thought that Willem Dafoe was Sir Willem Dafoe, thought that he was British. So I don't know if Jermaine Defoe is British, but wait, you said he played for England, so yeah, he is
English.
But anyway, that's the only connection that I could think of. But good for Jermaine Defoe being an awesome person. Bradley, sounds like that was an amazing like connection that was made there. So
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome. But to segue a little bit, I do have one bit of housekeeping from our last episode 34 on rivalries. If you haven't seen that or listened to it, go back and check that one out. We had a lot of fun with it. But I realized I left out one piece that we're not going to spend a ton of time on, but I just needed you to be aware of. Harry, did you know that, and I don't think this is a thing over there, that college football rivalries, a lot of them in the throughout all ranks of college football, have like specific trophies that they pass back and forth. So like going back to the Tyne Weir Derby, it'd be like if every time that Sunderland won, they held on to a trophy and like engraved their name on it, and then they would have to give it back to Newcastle whenever they won. That's not like a thing over there, is it?
There are two examples that I can think of, but not at like club level. And we
Okay.
talk a lot about college sports being very similar culturally to English sports. No, there is not. There's not like a There's not like a comparison there. Obviously, we have the Ashes,
Yep.
where the trophy goes backwards and forwards, and in the Six Nations. And we didn't talk about national rivalries, but maybe that's saved for another time. In the Six Nations and amongst friendlies, whenever England and Scotland play, they contest the Calcutta Cup, regardless of what competition they are playing in. If
Okay.
England and Scotland are on the pitch, they're fighting for the Calcutta Cup, which is very cool.
That is cool.
And I'm pretty sure Scotland have had it a lot more than we have. I would check that, but it's always nice to be a little bit more Scottish default when it comes to
Yeah.
rugby.
Probably
So can you give us an example of a couple of colleges that like pass a trophy? I'm thinking of like like a Bratz doll, like a Trolls doll on a 2x4 that they just like write the year on, but I imagine it's probably a little bit better than that.
It honestly wouldn't surprise me if there's some like schools out there that do something like that, but no, there's these like some of these trophies go back like hundreds of years. There's one that is
Oh, wow.
literally, it is called the Old Oaken Bucket, and it is a bucket made of oak. There are two separate axes as trophies. There
Cool.
is a bell that used to be on a train. There's like a trophy that's a pair of cowboy boots that weirdly is between the University of Miami and the University of Louisville, which don't even like always play that often. It's just because they had a coach in common before that used to wear cowboy boots. Anyway, it's like a fun. They go back and forth, but yeah, this is actually impromptu. I didn't plan this. Do you want to do a quick game? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I want you to just guess the teams of the rivalries that I told you outside of the Miami Louisville one. Okay. So let's go ahead and start out with the Stanford Axe, because that's one that, in theory, you have. I've just given you a hint.
Sure. Can I ask a question, a qualifying question?
No, this is
for a
completely
clue?
this is completely blind. No, yes, of course you can.
I don't know who Stanford's rival is. I think Stanford is in the Bay Area, right?
Yes, yeah, Palo Alto.
Okay, because I just did the San Jose nicknames episode, so I know plenty about like Santa Clara. So is the team that they are rivaled with nearby?
Yes. I'll give you a hint. They just moved conferences into the ACC along with Stanford, if that helps at all.
That does not
Okay.
help at all.
Well,
Because that's as far away from the Atlantic coast.
yes,
as I
yes.
can picture.
We could do a whole.
Is it like
college
Yale?
football realignment thing? It is not. It is not. It's another team on the West Coast nearby.
Oh, where's
But
Yale?
Yale's in Connecticut.
Oh no!
Yeah. Yale is.
Okay, is it UCLA or something like that?
It is not. It is the University of California. It's Cal. They play for the Stanford
Oh,
Axe.
fine. Okay, great.
All right. The next one, I'll give you a hint. It is two Big Ten teams. So think Midwest. They're within the
Yeah.
same state. And
Great.
if it's helpful, think of my mother, because my mother attended one of these universities. Happy Mother's Day.
Your mum.
The Old Oaken Bucket.
Your mum is a Hoosier. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
So is that Indiana State?
Indiana, but yes.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry, girl. I don't need to dox your mum. You can bleep that. I think this happened quite recently. I think they're like this. That they played a game since Christmas.
Well, they play for the Old Oaken Bucket every year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you another. Can I? I'm right. Purdue. Ah! Wow. Oh my day. I in a different world, in a different life, when I did my year abroad and came to North Carolina, Purdue was on my list. And
Yes,
you and I never would have met, and your mum and I would be we would be alma mater mortal enemies.
Yeah.
But okay. Oh wow!
You might have gotten into a fist fight with my mom.
I'm genuinely psyched that I got that.
You should be proud of yourself.
Purdue out of my butt.
That is very, very good, and that is where
Give me another
Indiana
one.
fans would prefer Purdue stays. All right, the second of our two axes, Paul Bunyan's axe. Again,
Am I supposed to know
super
who-
Midwest?
Am I supposed to know who Paul Bunyan is?
You don't know Paul? Oh, Paul Bunyan is like a legendary. I actually don't know if Paul Bunyan is a real person. I feel like he probably was, but like basically just a lumberjack. Like think of your stereotypical mythical lumberjack, flannel shirt wearing, jeans, cutting down trees with an axe.
Midwest.
Midwest, also in the same conference. One of the teams wears red and white. The other wears a dark red and a yellow.
A dark red and a yellow.
Yeah.
And red and white.
You have the states that these two schools represent. You have already done episodes on pro teams in their in those states.
Wisconsin.
Yes.
Okay. So the Badgers, right?
Yes. Yep. Well done. Very good.
Okay. They're not from the same state, right?
Correct. Two different states.
So Wisconsin is on Lake Michigan. Is the other state west of them?
It is west of them. Yes. Why did you ask me for a hint and then seem upset that I confirmed? Hey, you've got a map
Unless
right behind you. Go for
unless
it.
I look at my enormous map. But I couldn't name a college in. I couldn't name a college in Minnesota.
How about the University of Minnesota? Because that's the other team that plays for Paul Bunyan's axe. Harry, you are.
Whenever you're struggling for the name of a, clearly the rule is whenever you're struggling for the name of a college, just name the state and then say University of or state afterwards, and you're mostly fine.
But I can't.
Also, who is Paul Bunyan?
I don't want to lose the most important part of this plot, Harry, which is the fact that after this game, whoever wins, if Wisconsin wins, for example, and Minnesota has the axe, Wisconsin's players will run over to Minnesota's sideline, grab the axe, and run around with it.
Passive aggressive after such a expressively aggressive game. I like the idea of like having
give
a
them
token
a
that you
weapon.
like trade backwards and forwards. I
Yeah.
think,
So okay. So there's that. The last one I will give you. Well, the hint is it hits so close to home in a football rivalry. Uh, the victory bell. This is the bell that used to adorn a train.
right. I think the bell goes on a cart, right?
Yes.
It's now
Very,
like
very
wheeled in
good.
and out. And I
Yes.
think the cart is blue.
Yes. No matter who wins, it's blue.
Okay. Is this really, really close to home?
It's very close to home. Some would
Is it
say
is it Carolina Duke?
it absolutely is. Harry's got
Okay,
one.
great.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done. Incredible.
Okay.
We're gonna on a college football, like we'll do a college football rivalry episode one day and like do a
That
specific
was
one on that, and we'll teach you more about various
I
trophies.
think you do your best learning when you're out of your comfort zone, and saying not knowing where Yale was and confusing Connecticut and California. Not, I didn't literally confuse Connecticut and California. I just didn't know where Yale was, and I thought
Wow.
Stanford is like such a prestigious university that it would have a rivalry with another like academically prestigious university. But that's what Harvard do, right?
Yeah, Harvard and Yale do have a rivalry. I don't know if they have a
Okay.
trophy. I actually don't know if they have a trophy, but we can look into that.
Okay, great.
Uh,
Fantastic. I enjoyed that a lot.
I want to go ahead and waste no more time because we have a very, very, very exciting episode today that is a topic that we have been cooking up for a long time. By we, I mean you have had an idea for this. This has been kind of one of those natural ones that feels to. I think all of our topics are Atlantic-y, but this one is very Atlantic-y, if we might
Sure.
if we might be so bold. But this one revolves around the time of year that we are in specifically. Right now, we have some of the most exciting football, and I do mean football, not American football. I mean the football of the world. We have some of the most exciting soccer happening in the entire world right now because it's almost mid-May. We're getting to the point, and I'm not talking about anything related to the upcoming Men's World Cup. We're just talking about the seasons coming to an end all across Europe.
Yes.
And so today's episode is going to be basically a dive into how football finishes, and especially in the context of some awesome, awesome stories that we have this year. But I really, really like this concept because not only is it relevant to right now, it's also like just foundationally one of the things that I love the most about sport
Yeah,
in the
cool.
UK and England, but especially the sport of football. So like right now, where we are all across Britain in small communities, large cities with all over, there's dozens and dozens of communities feeling this unique sense of jubilation that comes with the realization of hope, and dozens more are feeling despair because of
Yep.
going up, going down. You're not feeling despair going up usually, but the despair of uncertainty for their club, for their community, for their town, their family, their loved ones, going non-league all the way up to the football league, jumping up the pyramid from fifth to fourth, going down and vice versa. Like these moments of emotion that are so high for one side and so low for the other. This is what we love about sport the most. Thinking of the steady climb back to glory for a club like Bolton, who's trying to win a playoff to move back up the
Yeah.
pyramid and get one step closer back to their Premier League glory days. I'm thinking of clinging to a last vestige of hope that Leyton Orient has as they barely escape relegation out of League One. The frustration of what could have been and what still could be at a place like Notts County, where just 3 years ago they had one of the best seasons in I think National League history, and they got, or maybe it was, I don't remember if it was League Two or National League, but they only to get spoiled by Rob McElhaney and Ryan Reynolds throwing a bunch of money at Wrexham and making their season like the second best season of all time in their league. And then a fall from grace, like with a club like Luton or a club like Leicester, who Luton, both teams falling from the Premier League, but both also having fallen down. Now Leicester going down to League One. Gratification delayed but not denied, going up from the National League to League Two for a Rochdale squad that went from losing out on automatic promotion at the death against York City to all of a sudden almost losing again in the playoffs, but then going up on penalties. And then York City having one of the best seasons and nationally having like 108 points, something like that to go up. So anyway, this is the most exciting time of the year. And we haven't even mentioned Europe. So I'm gonna like pull myself back here and let you dive in a bit here, Harry. But I am so excited about this time of year. I love all the stories that come out. Please help us learn how football finishes, break it down, what makes it so special, and what is up with all these European competitions.
Few things make me happier doing this or just in our relationship than when one of us gets so like moved by a facet of the other's sports culture. That's why that's such an important pillar for like our relationship and why we think this podcast works, because it's about celebrating those differences without necessarily focusing on, specific teams doing whatever. Like we're both, we're both Brighton fans and both Pittsburgh fans, and those narratives are always important, but it's actually the setting and the structures that they are within that moves us like this. So hearing you just wax lyrical like that always makes my day. And you're so completely right. And I love that you get it. And I think there's such a peril and such a excitement to this end of the season, which I don't think can necessarily always happen in a closed league. I want to throw this question back to you before we sort of gorge on this. At the moment, we're in the NBA playoffs and the hockey playoffs.
Yes.
And can you really quickly give us a very brief overview for what the postseason looks like in hockey, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy because actually both the NBA and the NHL have the same exact postseason format. The PWHL has a very similar postseason format, as does the WNBA. The PWHL is happening right now. WNBA is on a different time frame. But just to go to hockey, go to NHL and to the NBA. Super simply, 16 teams make the playoffs. There is like a play-in tournament on the NBA side that complicates things a little bit, but basically just know the best 8 teams from the West, best 8 teams from the East all get seeded together. It depends. Both leagues do the actual how they set the brackets slightly differently, but again, top 8 from the East, top 8 from the West. They'll play 7-game series until they get down to a final 2, who will play a 7-game series to determine the champion.
And that is exciting, right? But I think if we consider the final game, the finals or the World Series as being the end of those respective seasons, by the time we get to the end of the season, all but 2 teams aren't in it anymore.
Yeah.
And if you're a fan of a team that didn't make the playoffs, have you really had that much to cheer for the last month or so?
Yeah,
there's an enforced pacificity to supporting a team that aren't in the playoffs. That is rarely the case in English football. And it's this time of year when, if you are in the top half of your league, you are looking at, in the Premier League, as you mentioned, we're looking at Europe. You're looking at, contending for different European places. If you're in the top half of the Championship, you're looking at whether or not you can make the our playoff places, which works slightly differently, albeit quite similarly to what you've described in America. And then at the other end, because we have this open league system, as we know, which is a fundamental part of a fundamental difference between American and European models of sport. If you're in the bottom 10 places, there's always that risk of relegation and all of the
Yep.
sort of turbulence, sporting and financially, and sometimes, socially around the club that comes with the peril of dropping out of your league. It's such a brilliant time of year, and that's just for the leagues.
Yeah,
we also
and
have cup competitions, and
I think real quick before that, I think it's also a unique thing to England, especially now in this current state of English football, because of how many European places there are, and not to get too ahead of ourselves. Like there's more teams can kind of get into the bottom half. Like we're talking about, I was talking about this kind of as somebody who is a relatively newer Brighton fan. I mean, I've been on the train for about 4 or 5 years at this point, but like that's pretty new, especially compared to you. But I'm looking at this year of right now. I think as of today's results, we're in 7th, which like just edges us into the European spot with 2 matches to go.
sure.
But like, yeah, again, like if England didn't have so many European spots, and we could get into that, but like then 7th place might not be as interesting, to be fair. But
Yeah, true.
yeah,
There are 2 points of prestige for, in this instance, coming 7th and how it pertains to entering different European leagues. For celebrating the purity and the mobility that's possible in the English system, having a team like Brighton, who when I was dragged to support Brighton by my dad. I didn't care about football, and he took me to objectively one of the worst football stadiums in the country to watch objectively pretty rubbish football in a city that we so happen to like. And Dad was like, "This is your future," and I was like, "I'll be a Chelsea fan if that's the case." Of course,
and my
of
look
course
where
you
you are now, Chelsea,
and then
2 places
and
behind.
then we got really lucky, because through fortunate ownership that we don't get into now, we've risen. We've used the mobility of the open European league system, and we've risen up. And one of the crowns of our success is the fact that we have had a season in Europe, and there's an opportunity that we do it again. The European competitions just pit us against the other best teams in Europe, and therefore a slightly higher level of competition than we're even potentially used to in the Premier League. That's one of the prestige points. Winning a European trophy is considered, one of the most prestigious and fulfilling things that you can do, one of the most successful things you can do in European football. And of course, we're really talking about the Champions League,
Yeah,
as named, being the pinnacle.
Yeah, can I ask about like about that prestige that you're talking about? Like,
Sure.
yeah, the Champions League obviously prestigious. The Europa League feels like that's so. If you're unaware, Champions League is like the top competition for all the best European teams. Then there's the Europa League, which is the same thing, just like at a slightly tier down, and then there's the Conference League, which is like the third tier. Do those two hold the same level of prestige? Like, obviously, I don't think any team is going to be sad that they have won a competition against their peers in Europe. But like, I'm thinking of for a club, maybe not. I feel it's hard for Brighton because Brighton doesn't have major silverware, which is one funny, actually, quick aside here. The fact that you guys call it silverware, we call it hardware, is such like one of those like slight differences in our interpretation of the English language that I think is funny, and I don't know why there's a difference. Anyway, is like would somebody like a Brighton look at like winning a European Conference League differently than or more prestigiously than winning the FA Cup or like the Carabao Cup or something like that?
Such a good question. So, number one, for those of you who are listening that don't know, because I think that is a couple, these European leagues run alongside our domestic leagues. So if we're talking about teams that play in the Premier League, they also might play in a European competition, and they play literally midweek, and it's fantastic. Part of the fun is traveling around Europe and watching your team in different places, and occasionally you get like a really fun town or city or stadium to go to. The prestige is a really good question. There was a major revision to the structure of these European leagues when they introduced the Conference League, which, as you say, is the third tier. On the one hand, there is loads of money in European football, so adding a tier and making it more accessible to clubs in leagues that are lower in the UEFA coefficient than the top 5, 6, 7 leagues in Europe. That's really cool. So
which is just the coefficient is just how we try to determine. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So in the Conference League, the bottom European tier, you've got a lot more teams from Turkey and Romania and Greece. There are lower ranked teams in the Scottish League. I think there is at least one team from the Irish League. So there's a whole lot more inclusivity there, and a lot more accessibility to the financial rewards of playing in Europe, because you get gate receipts, you get a lot more sponsorship, you get really good TV money. However, with the introduction of the third tier, the Conference League, they also removed a dynamic where previously, if you were in the Champions League and in your initial group stage, which was contested between your team and 3 other teams, if you came third in that group, you would drop down into the Europa League, which meant if you played in the Europa League, if you qualified for the Europa League, halfway through the season, you would be playing against the real big boys,
That's crazy.
Huge, the mega teams. If they had an off year, if this happened to Manchester United a couple of times, they would drop out of the Champions League and into the Europa League, which actually for them becomes a bit of a chore, because relatively speaking, the Europa League prestige-wise probably isn't.
So they're not going to be. Yeah, they're not going to be as excited. It'd be. You know what it'd be like? It'd be like if Carolina were playing in March Madness in the NCAA tournament, either men's or women's, and lost in like the second round, and then dropped down into the NIT, which is I don't know if we've talked about that, but it's a secondary tournament for like the next best teams. Like Carolina would be like probably not really motivated to play there. And even though that's not alongside, it's still like it's not alongside the regular season. It's like it's not as prestigious, it's not as exciting for somebody like a Carolina.
But a team in that secondary competition might actually really fancy being in the NIT, because if Carolina comes down, you've got a chance at catching a whale here. You could really take a scalp. So the Europa League has always acted as like it's never had the same prestige. Winning the Europa League grants you an automatic place in the Champions League, and the same for the Conference League into the Europa League. So I think it's really relativistic whether or not the team that you support entering Europe is like a point of excitement. And for teams outside of England's traditional top 6, I think any Europe is really great, which is cool, and that's a point of privilege for the Premier League for sure.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And yeah, again, like that coefficient where you've got teams, you've got all these teams that do have a fighting chance. It allows that kind of, it allows something of prestige to become available to some of those other clubs. So like the 3 Bs that are the killer bees, we can call them, that are chasing that spot, Brentford, Bournemouth, and Brighton. I guess really chasing 2 spots in Europe. All 3 of those clubs would be really excited to be in either the Europa League or the Conference League. I guess there's an outside chance of one of them getting into the Champions League, but unlikely.
Sure.
But anyway, just all interesting narratives, specifically for
It
this
is
year.
interesting. I think, and the potential narratives. Brentford and Bournemouth have never been in Europe. As you mentioned earlier, we were very lucky. 2, 3 seasons ago, we snuck into Europe. We went into the Europa League. We had a wonderful time. We played some of the biggest teams in Europe. We played against Ajax. We played against Roma. We did very well. We won our group. It was that was the best time ever in Brighton history, and we earned a lot of money, and that's been redeveloped into our club. The three Bs that you mentioned are all extremely well run Premier League clubs as well. So it would be a great reward to each of those teams for working so sustainably in a league that is increasingly stacked against them. However, there's way too much European football in the Premier League. The coefficient is broken. The fact that with the right winners, this is also the first time in history that, albeit we've only had 3 European competitions for a handful of years now, it's the first time in history that a English team will be in a final of the Champions, the Europa, and the Conference League.
Wow.
Crystal Palace are in the Conference League. Villa are in the Europa League and Arsenal are in the Champions League. And if we won all of them, I think the Super League is going to run back at us like the baddie in the third act. And I think it will be really hard to look past it. But that's Europe. That's how football finishes in regards to qualifying for and winning European competitions. If the winners of the Champions League are de facto the best club team in the biggest sport in the world. The Champions League is bigger than the Super Bowl. I'm so happy to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I realize there's far more countries involved, but in terms the Champions League final will, has a lot more has a lot more cachet to it in terms of the global, the global sphere. But is that the same on the women's side, on the women's Super League? I assume there is a women's Champions League.
There is a Women's Champions League. I think our qualification for the Women's Champions League has expanded. I think the top 2 at the moment, the WSL is going through a little bit of a change at the moment because the women's coefficient is improving and the WSL itself is growing this year, which means, and we're going to get on to relegation, I think, in a couple of minutes, we have something really exciting for the first time in England. But yes, the top 2 in the WSL qualify for the Champions League, and the third placed in the WSL go on to a Champions League playoff, and they'll go up against another team, and they'll have a 2-leg fixture, whereby the winners of that will then qualify for the league stage. The WSL is currently, this year, for the final year, a 12-team league, which I think is probably now restrictive. When the WSL came through and reached professionalism in professionalization? That's not the word.
You got that. You got that.
Is that not a word? Yeah. When the WSL was made professional, 12 leagues was probably 12 teams was probably a little bit too big. The breadth of quality across those 12 teams was quite wide, but now it's such a competitive league that for the beginning of next year, we're expanding the WSL to 14 teams.
Sweet.
If you are going to expand your league from 12 to 14 teams, you would maybe fairly decide to cancel relegation this year, because if the top 2 teams in the WSL2 just come up, you've got your 14 teams and you've spared one of your team's relegation. But they didn't do that, which is wicked. This year, the 12th place in the WSL will go to a relegation playoff, and it's the first time this has happened in the UK.
Cool.
So the top 2 from WSL2 will come up, and the third place from WSL2 will play against the bottom place in WSL1. So
so cool.
and that's a winner take. So there's a potential that 3 teams from WSL2 could come up and make the 14, or the team who are last in WSL1 keep their place and stay up. That's a trick that's really popular in Germany.
Yeah.
When German leagues finish, typically they have 2 automatic relegation places and 1 playoff, and that game means so much. There's, you've got one team that kind of deserve to make it to the league above, and one team that in any other season would probably be relegated. Now they'll have that A, extra shot at staying up, and B, a direct opportunity to play the team above you to kind of show that you belong there. It's fantastic. It's going to be so
cool.
exciting.
Yeah. Excited.
So that's coming up at the moment, and that's a deviation from the normal way that we do playoffs in the men's, which is also changing in the championship next year. This is such an exciting time, and it's fun to experiment with different things as well. I'm really excited to see how the WSL plays out before we expand. Bring it on, bring it all on. I inject it into my veins. It's such a good time of year.
So good. Well, let's then dive into the championship a little bit, because that is it's such a good league. First and foremost, it's bigger than the Premier League by 4 teams. It is the place where everybody feels like they're on the brink of something incredible, or they just came down from the Premier League and are desperate to rid themselves of being with the scraping at the bottom of the barrel where they don't feel they belong. But this time of year specifically, where you've got these playoff battles happening, and I know some of them have already happened. I think this past weekend, I know I saw some of Middlesbrough and Southampton, their first leg. There's a lot of it's a really exciting time, but how does you mentioned that it's changing next year, but how does it work now, and why is it being changed?
So, really good question. The why it's being changed is kind of debatable. Is it just kind of a cash grab? The playoffs are the playoff final is known as the most expensive or the most valuable match in football, because the playoff final, number one, you get decent money from TV for making the final, and number two, you make it to the Premier League. So it's worth like 125 mil in a TV broadcasting full stop, which is crazy. Currently, the top 2 in the Championship, and you're right, the Championship I think is the best league in football. I loved it when Brighton were in it. I pledged to watch the Championship when Brighton got promoted, and I haven't. I only sort of start watching it in late April, and I do feel bad about that. But the Championship is one of the most captivating, exciting, and representative leagues of any sport in any country. Literally the geography, the country is so well covered by Championship teams. Whereas in the Premier League, it's a whole lot of London, it's a whole lot of Birmingham, it's Manchester, Liverpool, and the North East, and now bizarrely the South Coast. But in the Championship, you've got such a breadth of the country and smaller communities that typically rally around single club cities more. That's really cool. God, I love that so much. Anyway, currently, top 2 go straight to the Prem. The next 4 places 3 through 6 go into the playoff semi-finals, where third will play 6th and 4th will play 5th, and the winners of those will go to Wembley at the end of May and duke it out for the playoff finals, which is just a single game, can go to extra time. It's brilliant. It's typically, the playoff final is typically dreadful football because both teams are so nervous, but it's so good. I've never seen a playoff final. I know they're captivating. I've only seen Brighton in the playoff semi-finals, where we lost twice before we got promoted automatically.
Oh wow. Yeah, no, I will say one of my absolute bucket list items is to go to a Championship playoff game of some
Yeah.
sort, just because for all those reasons you described, it's just so like,
The
and
the
it just gets me
atmosphere
all
is
in the
brilliant.
feels. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And what's also fun, you get to this time of year and you can look at the league table and sort of cherry pick which ones it's really easy to fall in and just pick a team that you want to come up. And I, as a bit more of a purist, will look at this and want a team that hasn't been in the Premier League either recently or maybe ever. So we've got Coventry coming up this year. They haven't been in the Prem for over 2 decades. Ipswich were in last year, but that's great, but they hadn't been in for a while before that. And then we've got Millwall, Southampton, Middlesbrough, and Hull. Southampton and Middlesbrough, in my opinion, you've had your day. I'm glad that they're playing each other because Middlesbrough have been in the league, in the Premier League, in the last like decade or so, a couple of times, and Southampton keep coming up. They used to be brilliant, and then they've sort of suffered recently. So Hull and Millwall, come on in.
The other thing about Southampton, and like I know a couple of Southampton fans, so like condolences to you. However, if you don't go up, there is some preservation of the Southampton and Portsmouth rivalry that would get to keep going. So I'm kind of hoping that gets to stick around.
So that's how the promotion works at the moment in the Championship. Next year it gets expanded, and we're actually going to have playoff quarterfinals first. So the teams in third and fourth will go straight to the semi-finals. 5, 6, 7, and 8 will then play off against each other beforehand. Wise has been added. I think, number one, yes, there is more money in it. The Championship is always looking for ways of making the parity in broadcasting revenues between the Premier League and the Championship closer. Also, and I saw a huge amount of discourse saying that it's sort of disingenuous and poorer competitive balance, that maybe the team in 8th doesn't deserve, there's such a disparity in points between 8th and 3rd that, the quality difference is disingenuous to elevate them into a position where they can make promotion. I think that's rubbish. Because of the overwhelming financial might of the Premier League, I am pleased if the top 2 places are typically taken by the teams that were relegated the year before. Diversifying the number of teams that can make the playoff finals so that it's not necessarily the Premier League teams every time. That's wicked. I would like this is a good way of spreading that financial that financial parity that the Championship is looking for 2 more teams. And if it was installed this year, Wrexham would have made the playoffs. That incredible story, as you mentioned in your wonderful, almost poetic brief at the beginning of this episode, Wrexham, who took Notts County's place at the top of the National League and then got a promotion, they missed out on the playoffs by 2 points. And I think that's going to be an incredible season of TV. But yeah, what a way of sort of highlighting both the good and the bad of the English open league system. Then through a story like Wrexham, and for them to come so close is actually remarkable.
It really,
even if they did fall short.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't get promoted 4 times in a row. Only 3 times, and then a couple points short of a chance for the 4th. Yeah. Crimea River, but yeah, incredible rise, no matter how it's been done. But it is again, and you get the same thing. You can extend the same thing down to League One, down to League Two, down to the National League. I think specifically, obviously, you get down even further to. Some of those where the pyramid splits off into northern and southern leagues, and it gets a little bit murkier. But League One, League Two, National League, kind of that tension of if you're going to go from non-league to fully in the EFL. the tension of how far you're falling down or going up, taking that one step closer to that amazing league of the championship, like you're talking about. That drama is doubled and tripled, and it again, like really again, bucket lists for me to go to a championship playoff, really any of those playoffs, League One, League Two, National League, just such a cool bit. Like you said, most of those towns are single club, small towns where those supporters have so much passion. It's what we talked about on our last stadiums episode, where the community of it's where kind of the communal heartbeat of football really shines through. So yeah, I'm excited to watch some more of these playoffs as they come in. A few others quickly. I want to be conscious of our time here.
Yeah,
that we should really just a couple that we should talk about are on kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. Some of those falls from grace or potential falls from grace in the case of Spurs. So Tottenham Hotspur, one of the big six clubs in England, who I know other fans, especially Arsenal fans, would love to kind of jab at their actual status as a Big Six club, given their relative lack of success in like major competitions. But they are objectively one of those Big Six clubs in terms of finances and prestige and how kind of the world looks at them. But they are on the brink of depending on how things go. But with West Ham and with some of and their final two fixtures as well, like they're on the verge of becoming the first Big Six club to go down in the Premier League era, which is insane. Yes. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the club that won the Premier League 10 years ago, Leicester, in the ultimate March Madness style Cinderella run, have now gone down from the Championship to League One. So, Harry, what is going on in both of these cases, and what can we take away from it?
Okay, so there is a silver lining that we will get to in a moment.
Okay.
Let's talk about Spurs first. Unfortunately, it would be way more interesting if there was a enormous calamity that happened at Spurs. Regrettably, what's happened is we've got ownership that's a little bit asleep at the wheel, combined with some of the worst injury luck I can remember in the Premier League. Season-ending injuries for 4 of their, maybe 5 of their starting players.
Seems like
in
it might January. Be a problem.
That is, it is. All of their sort of creative attacking players, for the most part, got injured. They had to bring some more in January. They took a long time to get up and running. They held on to one manager far, far too long. They brought in a second manager who lasted, I think, 4 games and was just awful. Seemed like a bit of a bully. Treated his players poorly and was booted. And then they brought in, and I promise we're not trying to make this episode all about Brighton. They brought in Brighton's former manager, who I still have very strong feelings for, Roberto De Zerbi, who by the looks of it, has just sort of given the players love and empathy and space to. He said in his first interview, he said these players need a brother. They don't need a coach. They just need someone to believe in them. And sure enough, someone believes in them. Aww. They won. I know, it's really sweet. They've won 2 games. They drew and then won 2 games back to back. So Spurs, who did spend a little while in the relegation zone, have just dragged their way out. However, Leicester, as you mentioned, 10 years ago, the ultimate Cinderella story, with a team that was assembled for less than £30 million. They won the league against teams whose teams were assembled for 20 times that. They have, unfortunately, through some really poor decisions, a little bit of arrogance, thinking that a club of that stature probably couldn't go down, misused funds. They've paid the wrong players too much money. They've been sucked into They really were asleep at the wheel. They've been sucked into relegation from the Championship, which means a team that won the Premier League and qualified for the Champions League. They played in the Champions League 9 years ago, and now they're going to be playing in the same league as Lincoln. And Lincoln's a wonderful place to go, by the way. Actually, they're not going to play in the same league as Lincoln because Lincoln got promoted. They're going to play.
But we
in the
can
same
still go to
league
Lincoln. We can still have a fun time there.
Yeah, they're going to play in the same league as AFC Wimbledon, who have only been. AFC Wimbledon weren't in the Football League when Leicester won it, won the Premier League. So obviously this is heartbreaking for Leicester fans, who also won the FA Cup, I think, in 2021. So like they've been good recently. What's the silver lining? The silver lining might genuinely be if a team like Tottenham Hotspur can, in 2 seasons, go from real like the top 6 of the Premier League to relegation battle, and it has been a relegation battle. And if a Cinderella team like Leicester can win the league and then fall down with a double relegation, which is probably one of the most humiliating things you can do in English sport, into League One, I don't think external buyers, particularly people that want to own the Premier League teams to make money, like Blueco, I don't think they see Premier League teams as the same sort of investment again.
That's code for Americans, Harry.
That's code for
Americans that aren't like me. Don't worry, I'm a cool American that respects.
You are a cool American
that respects the football league.
We're talking about the spate of new American ownership, where we've discussed this in the past. In the Premier League, if you want to change the rules, you just need a simple majority. American ownership is very close to that, and I'm not saying that that all American owners are banded together in the same direction and they want to compromise the integrity of the league, because maybe that would hurt their commodity, their asset. But we've already seen, Todd Bowley come in. Is he the owner of the LA Dodgers? I think he's something to do with the LA Dodgers. Yeah. He bought with Blueco, the consortium. He bought the controlling stake in Chelsea and immediately started suggesting that we should have all-star weekends and bring in a wide array of sort of American sports-centric sort of inventions that don't fit with the culture of English sport. So but weirdly, and this is like one of those nature taking its own course, the most terrifying and quintessentially European part of the open league system might be scaring away the owners that want to change the open system in the first place. I've just heard the 2-minute warning whistle as we careen towards the end of this episode. Adam, I think you've prepared our 2-minute warning question. Is that right?
I have, and it is a fun one.
I hope so, because I didn't.
Excuse me, yeah. Hope so. Our 2-minute warning question is a fun one for especially people of our generation, I feel like, who came up, part of their enjoyment of sports as children was playing video games, because I feel like we're the generation that had, like, the first, like, true simulation style video games. Like, obviously there have been sports games around forever. See Tecmo Bowl, awesome game, but like those aren't the ones that are like that aren't giving you the immersive feeling. Even if we look back on the graphics to gameplay today and laugh in some cases. But that said, Harry, what was your first Wow. That said, Harry, what was your first sports video game, and do you think it holds up today?
True sports video game was probably FIFA 2004. I've bought and owned an embarrassing number of these games. And what is a shame is the second part of your question kind of is eroded by the fact that every year they get supposedly incrementally better. So when you jump back 2 decades, it's like really different. But I think it kind of does. That we're gonna hit this. We're gonna hit this a moment where we will reflect on, like almanacs discussing specific seasons. We'll be able to look at things like FIFA and Madden as like time capsules for relevancy and almost like an objective perspective of sport back then, even though, you know, that the games that came out before anyone had won the league that year or won the Super Bowl that year. And you can go back and be like, oh, yeah, Arsenal in 2004, they had Thierry Henry and they rated him like, you know, he's an 89 in this game. So, yeah, my first sports video game was probably FIFA 2004. And by today's standards, it's total crap.
I like it. Well, mine was actually the same year. My first game that I remember playing a lot of was actually Tiger Woods PGA Tour 2004. Such a great game. Good. I had it on the GameCube. It came with 2 discs. It was the only game that I ever remember seeing that had 2 discs because it had so much like content on it. Like I think the second disc was for this like world tour thing that you could do. The cover athlete does not hold up. Obviously, in sporting prestige, 100%.
Tiger Woods?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Like, obviously.
Who else would they put on it?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the golf speaks for itself, but, you know, we hope that he is working through the very public issues that he's having. However, that said, the game itself very much, I think, holds up. I haven't played it in a long time, but just from my imagination, and again, coming from the perspective of, like, you know, a 7-year-old when I had this, but it felt like big. It felt cool, like this immersive world where like they had these like fantasy courses and places from all over the world, and I was like, whoa, this sport is cool. So yeah, I would say it holds up. But yeah, I greatly enjoyed that one. Also, those FIFA and I mean, just EA games in general had great soundtracks back in the day. But that's totally subjective. Anyway, I think I hear the final whistle. So Harry, do you want to get us out of here?
Yeah, I want to. As always, we're going to thank Luke for the use of our wonderful Athlantic logo. If you have enjoyed today's episode and you are watching on YouTube, leave us a like and subscribe. If you are listening on Spotify, please leave us a review. That helps like a bunch. We've had a couple and they've been very nice. Probably helps because we know who wrote them. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok. They're clips from the podcast. We also record extra things while we're doing these recording sessions. We play a little bit some games, so there's a little bit more stuff on there now. I'm still battling through the 65 or however many cities in America, ranking how well they've named their sports teams. It's only here as we approach like the third of a way do I realise the enormity of this task and how few friends I'm going to have in America when I've finished. That's all. Enormous goodbye from me and goodbye from Adam, and we will talk to you next time.